Long ago, huge stones, strange ruins, and giant marks were left behind in different parts of the world. Many of them line up with stories in the Bible about giants who once lived among humans. Stay tuned because you're about to hear 5 of the most mysterious artifacts linked to giants from the Bible. The giant footprints of Dara. In northern Syria, there once stood an ancient temple called Dara. At first glance, it looked like many other old ruins, built with mud bricks and dark basalt stone. Lions and sphinxes were carved on its walls, watching over the place like guardians. But the real shock wasn't the statues or the layout, it was the footprints. Right at the temple entrance, pressed deep into the stone, was a giant barefoot print over 3 feet long. Walk further in and you'd find another 30 feet ahead. The third sat just before the sacred inner room, the part known as the Holy of Holies. These weren't normal footprints. Whoever they were meant to represent would have stood as tall as a 6-story building. Just picture it, a being so massive that each step covered 30 feet of ground. And the temple itself was special too. Its design looked almost identical to the Temple of Solomon described in the Bible. The same 3 rooms, the same long stairway, the same sacred space in the back. Scholars counted over 30 similarities. But unlike Solomon's temple, which vanished long ago, Dara still carried its giant footprint. Some researchers said the prints were just symbols, carved to show an invisible god entering the temple. Maybe Baal, the storm god, or Ishtar. The goddess often linked with lions. But to the people who built Dara, the message was clear. The footprints meant this place had been entered, claimed by a powerful being. In the book of Genesis, there's a short line that says, "There were giants in the earth in those days." These prints felt like proof of that memory. Sadly, in 2018, the temple was bombed and much of it was destroyed. Looters came after, stealing the giant lion statue and other pieces. Today, only old photos and notes remain, but the mystery of those giant steps still lingers, like the echo of someone too big for history to forget. The Goliath Gate of Gath. Not far from Jerusalem, in the land once ruled by the Philistines, archaeologists began digging into a dusty hill called Tel Es-Safi. People had long believed it was the site of Gath, the city where Goliath, the famous giant who fought David, once lived. For years they found small things, shards of pottery, old walls, bits of tools. Then in 2015, they uncovered something that made everyone stop. It was a city gate so massive it made all the others in the region look tiny. The gate was built in the 11th century BC, the same time the Bible places the story of David and Goliath. Its walls were 13 feet thick and built with stones 6 feet wide. The city stretched out with fortifications, rooms for defense, and even an iron smelting workshop where weapons may have been made. This wasn't just a village, it was a fortress, ready for battle and powerful enough to intimidate anyone who came near. The Bible says Goliath stood 4 cubits in a span, about 7 feet 10 inches tall. For centuries, people wondered if that was true. One archaeologist suggested something interesting. Maybe Goliath's height wasn't just about his body, but about the city itself. The walls of the gate measured the same height as the description of Goliath. In a way, he could have been a living symbol of Gath, big, strong, and impossible to ignore, just like the fortress he defended. But then came another clue. Near the gate, they found a piece of pottery scratched with 2 names that sounded almost exactly like Goliath. That proved the name was real and used in the region at the time. So even if the David and Goliath story grew into legend, the city really did have people with that name. Gath was eventually destroyed in 830 BC during a siege, its walls smashed and its strength broken. But when you stand in front of the ruins of that giant gate, it's not hard to imagine what it must have felt like to face a city where giants truly lived. The iron bed of King Og. And in the Bible, one giant stood out as the last of his kind. His name was Og, and he ruled over Bashan, a land that stretched across what is now Syria and Jordan. The scriptures describe him as a giant king who fought against Moses and the Israelites. The detail that makes Og unforgettable is his bed. It was said to be made of iron and measured 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. That wasn't just a passing note. The measurement was written down on purpose, as if to make sure no one would doubt his size. Og wasn't just a man, he was part of a group remembered as the Rephaim, a race of giants mentioned in both the Bible and older stories from nearby lands. These beings were said to rule over 60 fortified cities in Bashan. When Moses led his people into battle, Og and his cities were defeated, leaving only stories and the memory of his iron bed. In the early 1900s, an archaeologist exploring near the ancient city of Rabbah came across a massive dolmen tomb. Its size was close to the bed of Og described in the Bible, long enough and wide enough for someone over 13 feet tall. And it wasn't alone. Thousands of these dolmens, giant stone tombs with massive slabs weighing up to 50 tons, cover the land of Bashan. Many are so big they could hold several grown men at once. Nobody is completely sure how they were built or why they were made so large. Some say they were tombs for kings. Others think they were monuments for gods or even the giants themselves. Standing among those dolmens, it's easy to picture Og's bed not as a legend but as something real, carved into the land with stone instead of iron. These massive tombs still rise from the earth, silent and heavy, as if waiting to remind anyone who passes by that giants once had their place here. The Wheel of Giants. In the Golan Heights, a rocky plateau swept by winds, lies one of the strangest ancient structures you'll ever hear about. From the ground, it doesn't look like much, just piles of black basalt stones scattered in rings. But when seen from above, something incredible appears. 5 giant circles form a huge wheel, over 500 feet across. In the very center sits a raised mound, like the heart of the whole structure. This place is called Gilgal Rephaim, which means Wheel of the Giants, and the name couldn't be more fitting. Archaeologists believe it was built more than 5,000 years ago, possibly older. That means the people who made it were stacking and arranging more than 40,000 tons of heavy stone without machines or iron tools. The walls were once 8 feet high in places, and walking between them today feels like stepping inside a giant's me. To build something like this would have taken tens of thousands of days of work, yet strangely, no evidence of homes, weapons, or even daily life has ever been found nearby. This wasn't a city or a fortress. It had another purpose entirely. Some think it was used for ceremonies, maybe even ancient burials where bodies were left out for birds before bones were collected. Others say it was tied to the stars, a giant calendar marking the sun and seasons. But the land has shifted so much over thousands of years that any alignment is hard to prove. For many people though, the name says it all. In the Bible, the Rephaim were remembered as a race of terrifying giants. The site sits right in their old territory. It feels less like a village and more like a monument to them, or even something they built themselves. Standing at the center, with the wind rushing over the stones, you feel how deliberate the design is. Perfect circles, massive rocks, a mound in the middle like a throne. It doesn't feel like a place for ordinary people. From the air, the Wheel of Giants is breathtaking, like a forgotten signal meant to be seen from the sky. Whether it was a temple, a tomb, or a map for beings taller than men, its rings remain one of the oldest and strangest monuments in the ancient world. The Stones of Baalbek. Baalbek is best known today for its Roman ruins, the giant columns that once held up the Temple of Jupiter, and the scattered remains of what was once one of the empire's most impressive religious centers. But hidden beneath those towering columns is something far stranger, something that doesn't quite fit into the neat story of Roman architecture. At the base of the ruins are stones so massive that even in our modern age, with cranes and trucks, they leave engineers shaking their heads. These are the famous trilithon blocks, 3 stones, each weighing around 750 tons. To picture that, think of a jumbo jet, fully loaded, and then imagine it turned into a single stone block. Now picture 3 of them stacked side by side as the foundation of a temple podium. Somehow, thousands of years ago, these monsters were cut from limestone, dragged almost a kilometer uphill, and set into place with such precision that you can barely fit a knife blade between them. And the story doesn't stop there. In the quarry, just down the slope, lies an even bigger block known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. It weighs roughly 1,000 tons, yet for some reason it was never moved. Half buried in the ground, it still sits as if the builders simply gave up midway. Then in 2014, archaeologists uncovered another block in the same quarry. This one made the others look small. It weighed an unbelievable 1,750 tons, the largest cut stone ever found on Earth. Still fused to the bedrock, it looked like a giant's project abandoned in the middle of work. Here's the mystery: is that the Romans were master builders, but even they never used blocks this size anywhere else. Smaller stones would have worked just fine to support the temple above. Using blocks that weighed over 700 tons each doesn't make sense from a practical point of view. So why were they cut, shaped, and dragged here? That's the question that continues to draw people to Baalbek. Local legends tried to answer the question. One ancient Arabic manuscript claimed that after the flood, Nimrod, the mighty hunter from the book of Genesis, sent giants to build Baalbek as a fortress for the sun god Baal. Some stories said Cain himself built it as a hiding place from God. Others said King Solomon used spirits and jinn to lay the stones for the Queen of Sheba, but the spirits rebelled before finishing the job, leaving the largest block stranded in the quarry. Travelers in the 1800s wrote about the stones with awe. One Scottish explorer said his mind felt paralyzed by the impossibility of any solution. Even modern engineers struggle to explain it. Some suggest giant wooden rollers, winches, and ramps. But even then, the manpower needed would have been in the hundreds, maybe even thousands. The design goes beyond what seems necessary, and that's exactly why many believe there was something more at play here. Each of these places still carries a shadow of something greater than history books are ready to explain. Giants may be gone, but their marks remain carved into stone, too big and too strange to ignore. If you enjoyed this look into ancient mysteries, don't forget to like the video, share it with friends, and subscribe for more stories that bring the past back to life.